Hi, so I'm going to film myself making a supersonic drive. So the soldering iron is cooking at 370 degrees. And here is the supersonic drive we're going to be building today. So what we're going to do is get my dummy build case, and we are going to take out a PCB, and then we're going to go with the pots. So the supersonic level pot, which is a B50K. And then the tone pot, which is an A50K. And the drive pot, which is a C100K. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to solder the pots into the PCB. That one is a little bit twisted, so we'll sort that. There we go. Well, I've messed that one up. Try again. And then my little professional tool, which kind of just keeps them in place. Right, time for solder. Some people like to keep it on the roll. I like to cut it. I feel I have more freedom when I do it. I don't suppose there's any real right or wrong. Some might say you waste a little bit of solder if you do it this way. They're probably right, but hey ho, it's the way I prefer it. I should really invest in a solder extractor fume fan. They're not that expensive, to be fair. If I keep going the way I am, you'd think I'd smoked 50 a day with all these fumes coming at me. That didn't go very well. Try that again. There we go. So there, now we've got them soldered in place. The joints look very good, so we're going to put it straight into the Supersonic enclosure. And we're just going to tighten them up. There we go. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick a DC socket in. Need one with it. Oh, there we go. A nut on. Saying that, there's loads of loose nuts in there kicking about. So I make sure I put the PCB in first with the pots, because this is going to squeeze in there over the top. So this goes in second. I'm just going to tighten that up. Perfect. Right, so I've got the knobs on, the pots in, the PCB soldered. We just need to put some knobs on. You can do this any point throughout the build. Some people might go, I do it last. I like to do it early on. Don't suppose it really matters. And these knobs have been a nightmare to get hold of. So we were buying them from a UK company called Knobs and Bobs off eBay, and we'd used all their stock, and then trying to get them from somewhere else was proving a bit of a nightmare. We found a shop on AliExpress, and we used up all their stock, and then we had to then source them directly from a Chinese factory who produced them, in order to get the quantities that I need, because we go through that many of them, because all our pedals have these knobs on. So yeah, it's been a bit challenging trying to find a reliable source that isn't going to run out all the time. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to wire up the foot switch. I'm just making sure that all the lugs are lined up, and we've got our little foot switch board. I need a transistor which will power the LED. That proved a little bit tricky than normal to get in, but got there in the end. So again, another professional tool, my little soldering tool that I use all the time. And now we're just going to solder these little lugs into place. That doesn't seem to want to work. We'll just There we go. For some reason that just didn't seem to want to take, but we finally got there. And then we snip the edges off and pop them over to here. Quick drink break. So now we've got that, what we're going to do is get the foot switch soldered into the back of the board. So it just sits in like that. And now it's a case of just soldering each of the 9 lugs so it's ready to put in. The trick is here, watch it pop, add a little bit more, and voila. So that's how you want it to look, or how I want it to look. Apologies. Some of you guys out there, some of you more professionals out there, might be looking at me going, my God, what's he doing? But do you know what? This way works for me. This is the way I do it. Now this does get a little bit hot, so what I normally do is leave it for about 5 minutes to cool. You've got a 370-degree soldering iron, touching all the metal contact points at some point throughout soldering this, so as you can imagine the heat does transfer through and it does get a little bit hot in places, so you've got to be careful. So what we'll do once we've done this last one is we're going to leave it stand for a few minutes just so we can put in the LED holder. So as you can see now, they're nicely soldered in, and we're going to put it to one side. Excuse me. And we're going to get an LED holder. And we're just going to get this into place. Excuse me. Right, so that's now in place. So what we're going to do is on the LED you've got 2 legs. The longer one is your positive. So on the front of here you've got a positive and a negative. So the positive needs to go in the top like so. the little plastic bit is important because it holds it in place and guides it into the LED and kind of holds it into place. And then just drop it in like so. And then the little metal washer, screw that in, and then what I do is I can find the right one, there we go. I just kind of hold it in place so it's straight while tightening the nut. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do now is, if I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but if you can just see in there, I'm going to push the little plastic thing in place, and then I want to just make sure that the LED is kind of level with the holder, so when you stamp on your pedal you don't catch it. And then we're going to solder that into place. Perfect. So, and then we're going to just snip the ends off. And that's pretty good. Happy with it so far. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut some wire. So I use 28 AUG silicon wire, and I've got a little template for the wires between here and here, and a little template for wires from the jacks to the foot switch. So what I'm going to do first is just cut the wires from the jack. Just this way I know that they're perfectly cut to how I like them and how I want it to look. I like to give myself a little bit of excess wire. Don't like it too tight. I like a little bit of excess just in case I need to retrim it and make an adjustment somewhere. Now I'm going to cut 2 wires which will wire the DC socket into the PCB board. And now I need 4 wires which will connect the PCB board to the foot switch board. And I like to just mix the colours up a little bit because it just gives you a bit more of a colourful inside. You can use any colour wire. None of these make any difference. Where's that gone? There it is. So there, that's my wires cut and ready to go. That's soldered. I don't want to get rid of that. So what I want to dig out now is a couple of jacks. Just get them over to here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to connect these two up to the PCB board. So where's my knife? There it is. And all I do, I don't have wire cutters into that. I just use a sharp blade and I just gently roll it around and pull. You literally don't want to cut into it because you damage the braided wire. You literally just roll it around very, very, very gently and it pulls off. Some people like to tin theirs. I genuinely don't. I think if you're careful and you can get it into the where you want it to get it into, you don't need to. So I don't. And I'm just going to carefully solder that onto there. And then this side into the voltage part of this PCB board. That's better. And then the other side, where's the other white one? We'll just go into the ground. So this side is the ground. For some reason, this part of the pedal build just winds me up. I don't know why. I just dislike doing this part. I have no idea why. Bit bizarre. But hey ho. We have been asked in the past, are your pedals genuinely built in the UK and designed in the UK? Yes, they are. So don't get me wrong, some of the parts we order are from China because, let's be honest, everything you buy these days has parts in it from China because, one, they're cheaper. You know, we want to try and keep the pedal costs down. We have to bear in mind where we're ordering from. And there's not many UK companies, you know, building potentiometers and building jacks, and if they do, they come at a premium. So yeah, it's sad really, because we would love to have all the parts from the UK, but it's just not possible. So now we've got the power from the DC and the ground into the ground. Not the best bit of work I've done, but it will work perfectly fine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the input jack, and what we're going to do is we're going to wire that up. So I need to take a piece of solid core wire because this is just better for what I need here. And snip that edge because we've cut into it. The problem with solid core wire, when you cut it with a knife, you run the risk of damaging it and it can lose signal. So what I need to do is, if you look at it, you've got a flat edge, an angled edge there. So I need to connect these two up and put them into ground, and then the output comes down to your pedal from this side here. So let me just put that around there. Perfect. Right. So where's my little bit of solder? Let's check how the camera's doing. I just need to carefully solder these up and snip that little bit of excess. And then the second part. In between each solder, I'm using a little solder cleaner. It just keeps your soldering tip clean and good to go, basically. So now them 2 points are soldered nicely. Yep. And then I'm going to bring that down. Now this here is what's going to go into this ground here. So when it goes into there, that's going to go into the ground. But you can't do it too long, because if it goes too long, it touches the back of the pot and it'll just completely, your pedal just won't work. So you've got to snip it just the right amount. You can't go too short, because if you go too short, it can, well, it won't reach the ground. So simple as that. If you go too long, it'll just, your pedal just won't work. So what we're going to do now is just connect this blue wire. Again, doesn't matter what color wire you use, it's just what I like to use. So I need a little bit more solder. Right, so this side is ready to go. Ooh, that washer didn't want to stay in. So we're going to bring that down and just bring it back a little bit. Like I say, that goes on the left. And we're going to just put the jack into place. Get our little hex socket. And that is perfect. So we'll just move that wire out of the way for a second. And then we just carefully, we're going to drop that in. So make sure it's not touching anything else. And I don't think you're going to be able to see this. So basically what I need to do, I want to do it from the other side. I just need to solder that into place. Now, the problem I've got is I don't think you're going to be able to see it. But I'll show you once it's done. So yeah, just getting back to the pedals designed and built into the UK. We do get asked quite a bit. Someone did point out that on the pedal itself that I've got center negative and it's the American spelling. So they were like, well, why is it spelled the American way? The reason why is because when I designed these, it was on Photoshop, and Photoshop, I believe, is American, and it auto corrected it. So I typed it TRE and it's auto corrected it, and I haven't picked up on it, but they've already been printed, so that's why. Not the end of the world, but someone was a little bit not argumentative, but a bit like, well, if the UK built and made, why they spelt it the wrong way. Fair point. Totally get it. So that now is soldered into place, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to solder this into the input of the foot switch. So perfect. And obviously all the pedals have been designed in the UK by myself, and the circuits have been designed by Simon at JCFX. So what happens is I'll go to Simon, I'll tell him what I want, and he basically builds me the circuit. He'll send it to me, I'll try it, and then I'll send it back to him saying, can we tweak this, can we tweak that, can we do this, can we do that? And then we work on a pedal until we're both happy with it. I mean, ultimately, I have the final say because, you know, they're my pedals. But he might recommend bits to me that I haven't thought about, or vice versa. And we work together until we're both happy with the pedal, basically. And then once the pedal's done, we send the schematics off to Adam at AV Pedals, and he puts them onto, like, he designs them so they can go onto a PCB. And then once we get to that point, we send them to China to get these PCBs made. And there's a few reasons why we do that. The main one is because it's quicker and easier, and probably cheaper to do it this way. However, the main reason is because if you build 2 or 3 pedals and you're putting all the parts in, and you build 5 pedals, chances of them all sounding the same are going to be quite slim. They'll all have slight differences. But doing it this way, it's more sonically consistent, in my opinion. And I just find it a lot easier to do it this way because all the parts have been done. I find the pedals are quieter as well, because usually when Simon sends me the originals out, they are a little bit noisier than these ones. And they are quite noisy pedals because they're based on amps, etc., cranked amps. So the pedals are a little bit noisy. So, you know, a noise gate will certainly fix that. But yeah, 100% designed and built in the UK. But obviously, like I say, we do have China parts. So just bear that in mind. It's but anything you buy these days generally has Chinese parts in it. And that's just a cost cutting exercise, unfortunately, but it's just the world we live in. Right, so I'm pleased with that. That's gone well. So what we need to do now is just connect these wires up. So literally we've got 4 sockets here. So we've got in to in, ground to ground, volts to the LED, and out to out. And then that will sort it. And the pedal is done and ready for testing once we get to that stage. So we're just going to connect these 4 wires. And just going back to what we was talking about a minute ago, the enclosures are printed by Scott at Gajora Effects, and the Golf C65 enclosures that we use, I just think the enclosures are fantastic. They take the print really well. I think they look great, they feel great, and Scott does a great job up there in Scotland with the enclosure printing. So again, just trying to keep it within the UK as much as we can. I believe Gorva enclosures, I think they're Canadian, so but they're fantastic enclosures. If you've not seen them before, definitely check them out. We tried a few different enclosures when we started. I think the original one was the 1590B, and if you look at the differences, so that was a 1590B, and one of the original prototypes that we knocked up, we had side jacks, but I wanted to go top mounted. The only way to get around it was to go with a bigger enclosure, so we could get them in place, so the pots would go in and these would go in. So we had to change the enclosure, and we tried then going with is it the 159Bs, the slightly bigger ones. And again, I just wasn't overly fussed with the shape of them and the way they looked. And eventually we got onto these ones, and as soon as Scott had sent me one out and I'd seen one printed, it was like a case of that is what I want. So yeah, then we went with these enclosures. Like I said, it just seemed to look and feel better and take the print better. They just look more professional as well, in my opinion. You might think differently, but my opinion, I just like everything about them. And last one, and then we get to test. How's the camera doing? 38 minutes, not bad at all. It normally takes about an hour from start to finish, testing, packing per pedal. And this is one of the reasons why I prefer, and I went down the route of the PCBs already being built. It's just because it's less time consuming and it's just quicker and easier. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but I work full time as well as doing Affordaboard, running Affordaboard. Never mind doing Affordaboard, running Affordaboard. I'm a single dad with 2 young kids who like to do expensive things. So, unfortunately, I need to work full time as well as run the other side of Affordaboard with all the other pedal brands and accessories that we do. So, getting the time to build pedals, I needed to get it to a manageable amount of time. So, getting these PCBs built in China, like I say, they're cheaper, more consistently sounding, and everything about them is just better in my opinion. So there we go. A Supersonic has been born. So what we're going to do now is we're going to test it. Right, so we're all connected up. And here is the clean tone. So we're just going to check that everything's working. So yeah, sounds pretty good. Supersonic is